and break those promises once they get into office, President Trump promised big and has delivered even bigger. On the economic front, after inheriting the worst inflation crisis in over 4 decades, President Trump's pro-growth policies are making tremendous progress to make America affordable again. Under the painful Biden years, inflation reached a record high 9% and devoured Americans' purchasing power. In President Trump's term thus far, inflation has dropped to an average of just 2.7%, marking critical progress. The Trump administration is working hard every single day to bring down the cost of living through bigger paychecks and lower prices. Real wages are finally on the rise again and on pace to increase to roughly $1,200 for the average American worker this year. To put that into perspective, real wages declined by almost $3,000 under the Biden administration. That means Americans right now are on track already to make up 1/3 of the $3,000 in lost wages under Joe Biden. There's much work to do, but this has already been significant progress. President Trump has also delivered resoundingly on his promise to end Joe Biden's insane war on American energy and make sure our country has reliable and affordable energy produced right here at home. As a result, the nationwide average for regular gas just fell to its lowest level in nearly 5 years. According to data from Gas Buddy released on Monday, average gas prices have now dipped below $3 per gallon in 37 states, below $2.75 per gallon in 22 states, and below $2.50 per gallon in 5 states. Just a few years ago, we saw record high price gas of nearly $5 per gallon. American families faced constant pain at the pump, and those costs caused the price of everything else to go up as well. In fact, the average cost for a gallon of regular gas was the most expensive price during a presidential term in U.S. history under Biden's disastrous leadership, even with them recklessly draining our strategic reserves to try and artificially decrease prices. But thanks to President Trump, those days are long behind us. In the months ahead, Americans can expect prices to fall even further. We know that when gas gets cheaper, everything else gets cheaper too, and that's what this president is focusing on. Americans can also expect another boost to their bank accounts in the months ahead, as 2026 tax refund season is upon us after the holidays, and it's projected to be the largest ever thanks to President Trump's passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill. According to recent analysis from Piper Sandler, when Americans file their taxes early next year, their refunds could be about 1/3 larger than usual, or roughly an extra $1,000 per filer. That is money straight into the pockets of the American people. It's only because of President Trump and Republicans' leadership that Americans will now pay no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security. Republicans believe hardworking Americans deserve to keep more of their hard-earned money, but Democrats, on the other hand, every single one of them, voted against these massive tax cuts. So remember that the next time Democrats try to talk about affordability. Democrats don't have a single clue about how to make America more affordable. They just spent the last 4 years creating the very affordability crisis that President Trump is fixing right now. And if given the chance of power ever again, the Democrats will implement those same policies and jack inflation right back up to where it was. Finally, at the border, President Trump has restored America's sovereignty and made our country safe again. This is the single greatest and fastest national security victory in modern American history, and it's not even close. The latest preliminary numbers released from the month of November show we have the most secure border in our nation's history. This is a remarkable achievement. November encounters came in even lower than the previous historic low in October, if you can believe it. There were only 30,367 total encounters nationwide. That's lower than the previous record set in October. And for the 7th consecutive month, U.S. Border Patrol released 0 illegal aliens into the United States. Let me repeat, 7 months of 0 illegal aliens being released into our country. This is a historic achievement, and it's one that every law-abiding American citizen should be grateful for. At this point, in 10 months under President Trump's unmatched leadership, we've seen less apprehensions overall than we saw in just 1 month under Joe Biden. Again, let me repeat, In 10 months under President Trump, we've seen less apprehensions at the southern border than we saw in 1 month under the previous president. Again, remarkable results. All in all, the economy is back on track and ready to boom over the next 3 years. Biden's inflation crisis is over. Prices are coming down. Wages are rising. The border is fully secure, and America's best days are to come. President Trump has kept his word and delivered for the American people over the past year, and he will not stop fighting, as you heard from him directly this week, until our country and every state in this country is better than ever before. So with that, I will take your questions today. I know there's a lot of news. We'll start with our new media seat. Mr. Bowling, it's great to see you here. He's of Real America's Voice. He's also the host of Edge, his interview and commentary podcast. Please, Eric, why don't you kick us off?
Karoline, thank you very much for this and inviting me to the new media seat. As you point out, affordability crisis, it strikes me energy prices have been coming down aggressively since President Trump's second term, approaching $55 a barrel for oil, gasoline, as you point out, under $3 a barrel nationally, first time in 5 years. By the way, that $55 a barrel oil is about half of the peak under the last 4 years of the last administration, half the price. Wholesale prices come down, yet affordability crisis, a lot of the folks in this room, a lot of legacy media, some people in the front row, seem to want to call this an affordability crisis right now, forgetting the fact that over the last 4 years prior, we hit 9% inflation. Wages, as you point out, were stagnant at best, sometimes had dipped. That's a real affordability crisis there, but they weren't really calling it that then. You point out how President Trump is changing the affordability in America, but how will he ensure that the legacy media doesn't flip the script and change it so that they're using affordability as their word, their idea, versus what the American people who know much better?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, Eric, and it's a point of frustration for the president and for myself. I will say that's part of the reason I just kicked off this briefing today, setting the record straight with facts about the economic mess that the president inherited from his predecessor, Joe Biden. And he's focused on digging our country and our economy out of that hole every day. Things are getting better, and they will continue to. And President Trump understands better than any politician in this city the pain that the American consumer has been feeling for years now because of the last administration's policies. You heard him in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania this past week campaigning and talking to these voters, saying, I was elected to fix this problem, and I am fixing it. Don't forget who created it, and that's the Democrats. And I think when you hear the president talk about affordability, he's saying the Democrats are the greatest con artists in history because they are now trying to claim ownership of an issue that they created. And every data point and every economic metric does in fact show that the economy is improving. And so I do wish more people would report on those facts. I do wish that more people would remind the American public how we got here and why. It does not mean this president is discarding the feelings of the American people. He gets it better than anyone, which is why his entire administration has been focused on the issue of the economy and energy prices since day one.
If I may
Sure.
follow up, it's reported that around 10,000 commercial driver's license operators have been pulled by your transportation secretary department. Will the president apply that same metric? For the reason was the operators weren't speaking or reading English to a level that was safely, people thought they would safely be able to operate trucks on our roadways. It's estimated in California around 40% of Uber drivers, Uber and Lyft drivers, don't speak English proficiently, and the number's 45% in Minnesota. Will this same rule or metric apply to the gig economy like Uber and Lyft?
So I don't have any announcements on further regulations, if you will, from the Department of Transportation with respect to this issue. However, I will just reiterate the Trump administration's position is that truck drivers, particularly those driving big rigs on our nation's road and highways, who have a great responsibility to keep the American public and their fellow citizens safe, should be speaking English and should have an ability to read English proficiently. I think that's a very common sense policy to have. And we've unfortunately seen, and the Department of Transportation has uncovered and is actively working to fix these state-sponsored commercial trucking driver licenses, which were going to people who are not qualified to be driving these massive trucks on American roads, and they're endangering the lives of our fellow citizens. We've unfortunately seen many vehicle accidents across the country where people have lost their lives because of drivers that were just simply unqualified to be driving these trucks. So I know this is something DOT and Secretary Duffy take very seriously. Peter.
Thank you, Karoline. Based on the way that things stand right now, is Operation Southern Spear about drugs or is it about oil?
What I will tell you, Peter, is that the Trump administration is focused on doing many things in the Western Hemisphere. The president has taken a new approach that has not been taken by any administration for quite some time to actually focus on what's going on in our own backyard.